You know that specific feeling when you're standing on the edge of a diving board? You
Hmm.
climb the ladder, you walk to the edge, you want to jump, you can see the water right there, but your legs just, they lock.
It's that physical refusal. It's not that you
Right.
can't jump. It's that something inside you has just slammed on the brakes.
Exactly. And we feel that in life all the time, not just at the pool. You decide to start a business or get in shape or finally write that book. The logic is there. The motivation is there.
And then nothing.
This invisible friction kicks in.
Yeah.
It's a hesitation that feels almost physical.
And that is the moment where most people, they default to the S word.
Self-sabotage.
I'm sabotaging myself. I'm my own worst enemy. We love to beat ourselves up with that language.
But the document we are deep diving into today, The Silent Architect, Rewriting the Unconscious Mind, argues that sabotage is completely the wrong label.
Oh, completely.
In fact, it argues that using that word is part of what keeps us stuck.
It's a massive reframe. The core thesis here is that there is no enemy inside you. There is no saboteur. There is only a silent architect.
The silent architect.
And that architect isn't trying to ruin your life. It is trying to save it using a set of blueprints that are just, well, they're very, very old.
I love that distinction. So our mission today is to figure out who this architect is, why it keeps building walls where we want doors, and how we can actually hand it some new blueprints.
And it's a heavy stack of sources today.
It is. We're synthesizing a pretty wide range of material. We've got everything from like historical psychology to modern neuroscience and some fairly advanced therapeutic models.
We're going from Freud to brainwaves to, well, even psychedelics.
Yeah.
But it all connects.
So let's start with the basics. If we aren't calling it a saboteur, what exactly is the unconscious mind? Because I think for a lot of people, the unconscious is just that dark, scary basement.
The Freudian hangover.
Exactly, where we shove our trauma and things we don't want to think about.
Right. Freud really did a number on the PR for the unconscious mind. He popularized this idea that it's a trash can for repressed desires.
But the source material points out that this is actually a really limited and kind of recent view. It wasn't always seen that way, was it?
Not at all. No. If you look at ancient civilizations, that deeper layer of the mind wasn't a trash can. It was an oracle.
An oracle.
An intelligent force. It was where dreams came from, where intuition lived. It was a guide, not some kind of monster.
So somewhere along the way, we demonized it. But the source highlights a major pivot in the 20th century with a guy named Milton Erickson.
Ah, the father of modern hypnotherapy. Erickson is crucial to this whole deep dive because he completely flipped the script.
How so?
He didn't see the unconscious as a dark cellar. He saw it as a reservoir of resources. He believed the unconscious was actually, smarter than the conscious mind. It observes more, it knows more, and it's always trying to help you survive.
Okay, that's a comforting thought, but it's also confusing. If it's smarter than me and it's trying to help me, why does it make me eat an entire pizza when I'm trying to lose weight?
Right.
Or why does it make me freeze up when I need to give a presentation?
Because its definition of help is biological, not social. And this is where we bring in the modern figures mentioned in the text, like Dr. Joe Dispenza. He describes the unconscious as the emotional memory of the body.
The body becomes the mind.
Exactly. It's all about efficiency. If you do something enough times, whether it's driving a car or panicking when you see a credit card bill, your body eventually just says, I got this. You don't need to think about it anymore. It automates the reaction.
So the unconscious is basically a really efficient automation software.
That's the key insight.
Yeah.
It is not irrational. It is relational and reactive.
Okay.
It takes data, usually data from your past, and it predicts the future based on that data. The problem isn't the software. The problem is the data it's using.
Which brings us to the sponge years. The source puts a huge, huge emphasis on the age range of 0 to 7.
This is the construction phase of the silent architect.
Why that specific window? I mean, is it just because we're small and impressionable?
It's actually harder science than that. It comes down to brain waves. The source presents some really fascinating EEGs here.
Okay.
From birth to age 7, a child isn't operating in beta waves, which is what you and I are in right now, active analytical thinking.
Yeah.
They are primarily in theta waves.
Theta, that's the state associated with deep meditation, right? Or hypnosis.
Deep meditation, hypnosis, and that twilight state right before you fall asleep. It's a state of pure absorption. Adults have to practice for years to get into theta.
And kids just live there.
They live there.
So essentially, a child is walking around in a permanent state of hypnosis for 7 years.
That is exactly what's happening. They have no firewall.
Yeah.
No critical filter. If you tell an adult you're stupid, the adult has a filter that says, well, that's rude and untrue.
Right.
A child under 7 doesn't have that analytical barrier.
Yeah.
The information goes straight in and becomes a fundamental truth about who they are.
And the text makes a really subtle but important point here. It says the child doesn't just record words, they record the quality of presence.
I think this is the most convicting part for any parent listening. You can say all the right affirmations to your kid. You can tell them you're safe, you're loved. But if you are saying that while you are internally panicking about money,
Or if your body is tight with anger,
they download the panic, not the sentence.
they download the emotional environment.
Yes, they are reading the energy of the room. The source argues that self-esteem isn't built on compliments. It's built on how the environment responds to the child's existence.
Can we unpack that? Responding to their existence, what does that mean in practice?
Sure. Imagine a toddler crying. They aren't asking, did I perform well today?
Yeah.
They're just being. If that crying is met with comfort and patience, the architect records a blueprint. My needs matter. I am safe. If it's met with anger or indifference, the blueprint reads, my needs are a burden. It is dangerous to be visible.
And that blueprint doesn't just vanish when you turn 8.
No, it becomes the foundation. The silent architect builds an entire personality structure to protect that child. If being visible led to rejection at age 4, the architect builds a massive wall against public speaking at age 30.
It's not trying to sabotage your career.
It's trying to stop you from getting hurt again.
That creates this massive conflict, though, because now I'm an adult. I have a conscious mind that says, I want to be a YouTuber or I want to lead this team. But my unconscious is screaming, danger,
And that is a battle you are, statistically, destined to lose.
because of the processing gap. I have to say, the numbers in this section of the source were staggering to me.
It really puts our whole idea of willpower into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. The source contrasts the processing power of the conscious versus the unconscious mind. So the conscious mind, the part of me that makes New Year's resolutions, it processes at, what was it?
About 40 bits of information per second.
40, just 40 bits.
It's a flashlight.
Yeah.
It can focus on 1, maybe 2 things at a time. I will eat this salad. I will send this email.
A flashlight. Okay, and the unconscious.
Millions of bits per second. Some estimates go as high as 40 million.
40 million.
It's a supercomputer. It is constantly scanning your internal bodily functions, your memories, the microexpressions on people's faces, the tone of voice, the whole environment.
So when I try to use willpower to change a deep habit, I'm bringing a flashlight to a gunfight against a supercomputer.
You're trying to use a sticky note to override a mainframe. And that mainframe has a prime directive.
Okay.
Doesn't care if you're happy. It doesn't care if you are rich. It cares if you are safe.
And to the unconscious mind, safe just means familiar.
What looks like yesterday.
Okay.
That is the only safety check. This is why people stay in jobs they hate or relationships that are toxic.
Because even if it's miserable, it's predictable.
Exactly. The source gives a great example of this familiar hell. If you grew up in a chaotic home where love was unpredictable, your baseline for safety is actually high alert anxiety.
Right.
So if you suddenly find yourself in a calm, stable, maybe even boring relationship,
It feels wrong. It feels unsafe.
the architect sounds the alarm. This is too quiet. We don't have a map for this. Something bad is coming. And you might pick a fight just to get back to the chaos.
Because chaos is what you know how to survive.
Yes. Or the example of success contraction. That one really hit home for me.
The upper limit problem.
You get the promotion, you're making more money than ever, and suddenly you get sick. Or you start oversleeping. Your unconscious views that new level of success as unknown territory, and unknown equals unsafe.
So it pulls the emergency brake to bring you back to your baseline.
Every single time.
So we have this mismatch. We have a conscious goal and an unconscious brake pedal. And usually the way I try to fix this is I sit down and have a stern, logical talk with myself. Look, there's no reason to be anxious. This is irrational.
And how often does that work?
Never. Not once.
That's because you are speaking the wrong language. The source makes this crystal clear. The unconscious mind does not speak English, and it definitely does not speak logic.
You cannot reason your way out of a reflex.
You can't. So what is the native tongue of the architect?
That's the question.
If you want to rewrite the blueprints, you have to use the language of the right brain. Emotion, imagery, and repetition.
Emotion, imagery, repetition.
Think about how the belief was installed in the first place. It was likely a highly emotional event or something that was repeated thousands of times.
Okay.
To uninstall it, you have to match that intensity.
The source brings in a biological mechanism here called memory reconsolidation. This sounded like science fiction to me, the idea that we can actually edit old memories.
It's one of the most exciting discoveries in neuroscience. For decades, we thought memory was like a file in a cabinet. You take it out, you look at it, you put it back, it's unchanged.
Right. Read only.
But we now know that when you recall a memory, especially an emotionally charged one, it becomes unstable for a short window. It becomes malleable.
Like opening a Word document. You can actually edit it before you hit save again.
Precisely. If you can reactivate that memory while holding a feeling of safety in the present moment and introduce a new ending or new perspective, you effectively save over the old file.
You don't change the facts.
You still know what happened, but the emotional charge, the trigger, it dissolves.
So we know the language and we know the mechanism. Now we need the tools. The source outlines a toolkit for rewriting, and the first one they dive into is hypnosis. And I feel like we need to clear the air here because the source is very specific about what this isn't.
Yes. Put away the swinging pocket watch. This isn't stage hypnosis where you cluck like a chicken.
Right?
This is modern Ericksonian hypnosis. It's not about losing control.
It's actually about gaining control, isn't it?
It is. It's a state of focused attention. Think of it like a telephoto lens. Usually your attention is wide, taking in everything. Hypnosis narrows that lens so intensely that the critical factor, that little doubter in your head, gets bored and wanders off.
And once that guard dog is gone, you can talk directly to the architect.
You can suggest new realities. The source mentions humanist hypnosis specifically, which describes the state not as going under, but as waking up. You become hyper-aware.
Huh.
And in that state, you can look at a blueprint that says, I am not enough, and simply ask, is this actually true?
Yeah.
And you can change it.
But for listeners who aren't going to go see a hypnotherapist tomorrow, the source suggests auto-hypnosis. How is that different from just daydreaming?
Intent and structure. Daydreaming is passive. Your mind wanders. Auto-hypnosis is active rehearsal.
Active rehearsal.
You use breath work to lower your brain waves, getting closer to that meta state we talked about. And then you vividly visualize the outcome you want. But here's the key, the catch. You have to feel it.
You can't just see the picture. You have to feel the emotion of it already happening.
The body does not know the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. If you mentally rehearse giving that speech, and you generate the feelings of confidence and joy while doing it, your unconscious records that as a successful experience.
You're building a new history before it even happens.
You're stacking the deck. Another tool the source details is NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. This is a bit more technical, but it's fascinating. It treats the brain like a video editing suite.
This is the idea that our memories have submodalities, right? Like texture and volume and color.
Yes. If you have a traumatic memory, you can ask, is the image big or small? Color or black and white? A movie or a still photo? Usually, bad memories are big, bright, and loud.
And NLP says we can just turn down the volume.
You can hack the code.
Mm-hmm.
If you take that scary memory, you shrink it down to the size of a postage stamp, turn it to black and white, and this is a classic technique. You give the yelling voice a cartoon sound effect.
Like Mickey Mouse.
Exactly like Mickey Mouse.
Mm.
If you play that memory back with a squeaky voice, your brain cannot maintain the fear response. It creates a pattern interrupt. You are scrambling the code that tells your body to panic.
That seems almost too simple to work.
But that's the point. We're hacking the sensory input, not the logic. We're changing how the data is stored.
Okay, we have to touch on inner child work. I feel like this term gets thrown around on Instagram a lot, but the source treats this as a serious neurological tool.
It does. It moves it away from just sentimentality and into reparenting. The idea is that the part of you that is afraid, the part that sabotages, is usually stuck at the age the trauma happened. It's a 5-year-old part of your brain trying to solve a 40-year-old's problem.
And failing miserably.
And failing. So inner child work is about using your adult neocortex, your rational, capable brain, to go back in your mind and be with that younger part. You visualize that younger self, and you give them what they didn't get.
The source had a great phrase for this. It doesn't change the past, but it changes the conclusion.
That's the gold. You can't change that you were lonely. But if you go back now and sit with that child in your mind, the conclusion changes from I am alone because I am unlovable to I was alone then, but I have myself now. That shift in the blueprint changes your entire physiology today.
We're coming to the final section of the source material, and this is where we go into the new frontiers. The text moves into altered states and psychedelics.
It does. And it's very careful here. It cites research from places like MAPS and Johns Hopkins. We're talking about psychedelic-assisted therapy, not, just recreational use.
Right. So why include this in a discussion about the unconscious? What's the mechanism?
It's about the default mode network. That's the part of the brain that holds your ego, your rigid identity, your story.
Strict gatekeeper.
The strictest. Biologically, these substances seem to temporarily take that network offline. They soften the rigid boundaries. It's like shaking a snow globe. For a few hours, the defenses relax without collapsing.
So you can look at your trauma without the immediate fear response.
Exactly. Patients report being able to view their own life from a distance. They can see the patterns, the blueprints, without being overwhelmed by the emotion. It allows for a fresh look.
But the source puts a massive warning label on this.
A huge one. It emphasizes integration. It's not just about the experience, it's about what you do with it afterwards. And it requires ethical frameworks and qualified therapeutic accompaniment.
Right.
The silent architect can be rewritten, but you don't want to just knock down the support beams without a professional engineer present.
So it's not a magic pill, it's a facilitator.
Whether it's hypnosis or meditation or these newer therapies, the goal is the same: to create a state of plasticity, to make the concrete wet again so you can reshape it.
So we've journeyed from the ancient view of the soul to the cutting edge of neuroscience, and we've totally reframed this idea of self-sabotage.
We have. We've moved from seeing the unconscious as a villain in the basement to seeing it as a devoted, protective, but slightly outdated software.
It's the silent architect, working off blueprints from when we were 7 years old, trying to keep us safe in a world that has totally changed.
And that's the hopeful message here. The architect is not deaf. It's just been waiting for new instructions in a language it actually understands.
So for the listener who is feeling that resistance right now, that brake pedal sensation we started with, what is the immediate takeaway?
Stop fighting the resistance. Transformation happens when you stop trying to brute force your way through it with willpower. Instead, you have to start teaching your mind.
A shift from battle to collaboration.
You need to show it through emotion and visualization that the new path is safe. You have to update its definition of safety.
I want to leave everyone with a thought that really struck me while reading this. If your unconscious is simply trying to keep you safe by repeating the past, what would happen if the next time you feel that hesitation, instead of getting angry, you just said, thank you?
That changes the entire dynamic. It acknowledges the architect.
You say, thank you for trying to protect me. I know you're doing your job, but safe looks different now than it did when I was 7. I've got this.
That is the beginning of the rewrite. That is where the new life begins.
That's it for this deep dive. Go have a chat with your architect.
And maybe draft some new blueprints.
See you next time.